This is a live presentation of the Titan Upload Network.
The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you, as always, for joining us on this Monday evening. It is great to be back, guys. I feel rested, rejuvenated, and relaxed, and I am ready to go. And we have so much going on. It's been a busy couple of weeks since the last we've been on, and I won't waste a lot of time, but I will say the Titan Upload Network is going in a lot of new directions. We've got a lot of great things going on. And I have a lot to talk about tonight, and we'll definitely discuss everything going on. But definitely shout out to everybody that's joining the show. It's getting started a little early, but shout out to our buddy for Titan Sign Podcast. Tyler, it's always good seeing you. Good being back. Good job on the TikTok, by the way. And, of course, Bryce Pratt, our good buddy. Good seeing you, man. As always, Bryce Pratt's always popular on Twitter and a great follow. Make sure you check him out. And before we jump in our top news, really I just wanted to discuss just everything that's been going on. Everybody's been hearing a lot of rumors, especially with the network. We've had a lot of news feeds coming through. So, we've had a lot of hooks in the water, guys. A lot of things going on. We're really excited about this upcoming off season. We've got a lot of news that we've been trying to keep a close eye on, and a lot of new things that are in the works. So, to start out with the first one, I felt that going forward, that it would be imperative to the success of the Titan Upload Network to basically try and find, talented individuals. And as a group, and importantly as a group, we discussed this and felt that going forward, we want to bring in people that are talented, passionate about not only just the Tennessee Titans, but the NFL in general. It's a great league, and there's just so much to talk about, and there's so many great content creators out there. And we just feel that there are these individuals that definitely need to get the chance to shine on a bigger stage. And they've put in a lot of work and a lot of just dedication to their craft. And we appreciate that at the TUN. We really do. And people that do that are just... they're roses among the thorns. And the way you succeed in this business is finding those kind of talented people, finding that kind of drive, finding that kind of excitement. And that's what we're doing at the Titan Upload Network. That's what we're pushing for this upcoming off season and striving forward to the upcoming next season as we get to that cusp. So that being said, as a group, we took a vote. It was unanimous. And of course, as we felt the best thing to do was to add another talented individual who we felt brought just so much hard work, so much dedication, and could be a very valuable asset for the network going forward. And I felt also it would be of the utmost importance to help him shine on this platform as well. So going forward now, the Power Hour will be co-hosted. So that means I will now have the talented individual, my utmost respect to my new colleague and co-host, Lee Hillis of the 615 podcast. So that's our surprise. Lee, I am excited going forward in this new chapter of the Power Hour and with the Titan Upload Network. You bring a lot of energy, a lot of fire, and a lot of passion, and that's what we need with this network. And I am excited to have you on and welcome you to the first new chapter of the Power Hour.
Well, thank you.
And Lee, we know that what you're going to bring is a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, and we're excited, man. Not everybody from the show knows what we've been talking about, but we've got a lot of hooks in the water.
Yeah.
So going forward, Lee's going to be a big part of the show. He's going to be basically just the man that I'm going to rely on a lot, the guy that I'm going to come in and just have strong debates with, but also a lot of strong opinions with, and that's what Lee brings. And I'm super excited having him on the show. Everyone on the Titan Upload Network super excited for Lee. And we are really looking forward to see what Lee does also with his 615 podcast moving forward under the Titan Upload Network banner. So, Lee, before we get started, I definitely have to just let you just shout out to everybody and just let them know what your plans are. I'm sure you've got some things even we haven't discussed about.
Well, of course, I'm bringing back what I did last year, the whole draft cycle. That's coming back. That'll start in April. Um, and that's one of the big things that's coming. I may try to work with Brian on some of this draft stuff that's going down in April.
We'll definitely have a lot going on in April, especially draft wise.
Yeah, a lot.
Indeed. But the best thing is we know we've got the best man in the Titan Upload Network to help us grow and help us succeed. And also, guys, we've got another surprise for you, but we'll get to that later on in the show. We've got a lot to talk about, Lee. So, our first inaugural episode of the Power Hour with my co host, Lee Hillis from the 615 podcast. I'm not going to waste another minute. It's been a week. I'm refreshed. I'm rejuvenated. I'm ready to go to work, Lee. How about you?
As good as we can be.
And we'll make it the best we can on this Monday for all our audience. So, guys, let's not waste another minute and jump into it. I'm Michael Bishop with my co host, Lee Hillis. Welcome to the Power Hour. Let's jump into our top news. And, Lee, of course, one of the biggest stories that's come out since we've been off, Jalen Ramsey is going to be shopped around by the Los Angeles Rams. It looks like that they are going to try and find a new home for the all-pro cornerback, and it is going to be interesting to see everybody fight over him. And we've heard some teams starting to kick the tires, Detroit being one of them. So, Lee, what do you think the market is for Jalen Ramsey right now? Do you think that he's worth probably what the Rams are going to try and pull a trade market for?
Well, that's tough to say. Jalen Ramsey is 28, almost 29. And does he have a lot to offer? Yeah. If the Titans were to make that jump and go get someone like a Jalen Ramsey, you could easily move someone like a Roger McCreary and Elijah Molden inside and line Ramsey up across from Christian Fulton.
And that's a good lineup right there. But my biggest question is it something that the Titans could eventually afford, or are they going to have to potentially just find another answer for corner? Is this a realistic trade? I guess it's the better question.
Is it a realistic trade? I think it is. Of course, we were talking before, and of course, I did a mock trade through PFF. I gave up a few picks. I gave up our second round in 2023. I gave up our second and third in 2025 and Bud Dupree for a third round pick this year and Jalen Ramsey.
So, in your mind, Ramsey definitely exerts that he's worth at least those amount of picks, but also a current player right now, which hadn't worked very well with the Titans, but could very well function well with the Rams with their defensive line, which would be an interesting setup, especially with Aaron Donald potentially coming into what might be his last year. So,
if this trade was to go down, the Rams would have Aaron Donald, Bud Dupree, Khalil Mack, probably Kyle Van Noy comes back, Kenneth Murray, Asante Samuel Jr. Like that right there would be a loaded and stacked defense.
So initially, it sets up a defense that's looking for some talent that seems to be kind of thin at that position. But
yeah,
looking at one of the teams that really seems to be interested in spinning in the news cycle quite a bit, the Detroit Lions seem to be the front runner and the favorite right now. So realistically, would Detroit have a better shot?
Well, they have a young buck in Okuda, who they just drafted. He's, in my mind, he's a younger version of a Jalen Ramsey. And of course, the reason I mocked him to Tennessee, one, he's from Tennessee. He went to Brentwood Academy. So it'd be a homecoming for Jalen Ramsey.
And I'm all for homecomings. My biggest concern is Jalen Ramsey going to any new team is more than likely going to warrant a new contract. And that's something the Titans are going to have a hard time trying to shoestring, especially with Jeffrey Simmons' situation. So, is it a workable trade, especially knowing that a contract extension might be something that's going to try and push that narrative?
I would say yeah, because like if you look at some of the contracts at corner, you could actually make it a back end heavy with the cap. Looking right now at 2024, the Titans right now in 2024 have over $100 million in cap.
And going into that free agency market, the Titans are going to have some room to spend some money going forward.
Yeah.
My biggest question is, does it fit what Rand Carthon wants to do long term?
Okay, right now, I don't know. I think it could be to get a veteran, like a true veteran corner who knows the Titans defense.
And I don't think it's a bad idea to go after a corner at this point to where they could actually help their defense, which I feel interceptions were something they were severely lacking in big playmaking. My
And
biggest concern is it's just where the Titans are lacking so much on offense. It's really hard to try and justify that, especially in a market where they're going to have to potentially rebuild the entire offensive line from scratch.
that would be the only reason that right there, the offensive line is the only reason that I would not bring Jalen Ramsey in is because you have to basically rebuild this whole offensive line from scratch.
And as I said, I think he'd be a viable piece to a defense that's already played extremely well and shown that maybe with a potential playmaker, they could have won some games on the defensive end. But it's hard for me to picture Rand Carthon just throw that much money and especially just a lot of trade assets for one player, especially where he's come from a situation where they seem to have a lot of success building through the draft.
That is true. Looking at what Rand Carthon did in San Francisco, he drafted guys like George Kittle, Elijah Mitchell, Dre Greenlaw, and Brock Purdy.
So to finish this one off, we'll set the Titans aside. I won't mark them out, but realistically, out of any of the NFL teams, what team do you think Jalen Ramsey would have the most success with?
Right off the top of my head, I'd probably say Denver. Of course, under head coach Sean Payton, that he's always had great defenses, no matter where he's been.
And Denver would be an interesting fit. I do look at some of the teams that have a lot of salary cap to play with, and I mean, the first one that comes to mind would definitely be the Bears. They need some beef up front, beef basically on the defensive backfield. And really, Ramsey's just experience on just getting to the playoffs and having that Super Bowl caliber attitude, I think would just give the Bears exactly what they need. Just a playmaker at that position.
Yeah, the Bears would be another great team. Looking at, they do have the cap space for a guy like a Jalen Ramsey, and it wouldn't kill them to add some more depth in that secondary.
It'll definitely be an interesting story as we continue to monitor it. Jalen Ramsey is not going to be short of attention this offseason. Where he'll end up, we could potentially find out within weeks. Hitting our next news story, as it broke out this week, it appears that there was a report rolling around that Russell Wilson was trying to get Pete Carroll and John Shire fired from the Seattle Seahawks. Of course, Wilson disputes these claims, saying that they are false. But of course, we like to speculate a little bit because this is a very good story to speculate about. So, Lee, we all know that it wasn't a good. We all know it wasn't roses at the end of Russell Wilson's tenure with the Seattle Seahawks.
No, it was not.
But let's get your take on this. How do you feel the narrative is here with this story? What side do you feel is kind of being more honest than the other?
That is a tough thing to answer because you could either be looking at this from the front office side, but you could also be looking at this from Russell Wilson's side. And I put a one-liner on this. If it's true, what's being said, Russell might have seen some things that can't be talked about to the public.
And it's hard not to look back at last year and judge the situation off another team and another situation. But really, it just says a lot, and you have to take that into consideration. Russell Wilson goes into Denver. There's a lot of hostility there, especially with his teammates. He just doesn't seem to fit in well. He's running old play calling schemes in an offense that he's not in anymore. And it's really kind of just on the side that Russell Wilson's just can be sometimes a little bit of a head case at times. I mean, is that fair to argue?
Or a diva.
Yeah, I would go that far. But realistically, I mean, it doesn't sound like something Russell Wilson would do, but it's hard to back up without anything substantially to back it up with. So we've seen what his body of work on the field is with a lot of drama and a lot of just impatience at some point. But I have to give Pete Carroll the benefit of the doubt that his system works. If you can take Geno Smith and make him run your offense and make him the comeback player of the year, I mean, that really says a lot about Pete Carroll. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%. Pete Carroll, he's done this at a high level for so many years. He won a Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback in Russell Wilson, pretty much.
So moving forward to Wilson's next head coach and Sean Payton, do you think that this is a relationship that could work out, or do you think Russell Wilson's best days are behind him?
I think his best days are behind him. Sean Payton, by what I can tell, is a no nonsense guy. Cannot hear you.
I agree with you. I believe Russell Wilson's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think that's anything to be disputed. My biggest issue is Russell Wilson's just shown me that he's just really kind of just got to the point where he's more infatuated with image. And I say what I see.
Yeah.
And that's what Russell Wilson's put out for me. I get that vibe. I get that kind of sense. He's about trying to put his brand out. And that's what the whole thing in Denver was. Now, I'm not saying that he can't turn his career around with Sean Payton. I'm not saying that at all. But realistically, at some point, I mean, is he interested in trying to just step his career up to the next level?
Well, you've seen a track record of what Sean Payton can do. Just go look at what he did in New Orleans. He took a quarterback who's hit bumps in his career, in Drew Brees. When he started out with the Chargers, he was an average quarterback at best. But within the first 2 or 3 years under Sean Payton, had him in the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl over an eventual NFL Hall of Famer in Peyton Manning.
And it's going to be an interesting narrative going into the next season. We're going to be very intrigued to see if Russell Wilson can get back on the right foot and potentially be the comeback player of the year. Can Sean Payton make this his next best feat at transforming Russell Wilson back to his old professional self? And hitting on our next story, and of course, this one's picked up a little steam, especially as the day's gone on. It was appeared that a report came out that Jeff Bezos was still interested in potentially purchasing the Washington Commanders, but unfortunately, it seemed like Daniel Snyder didn't seem very keen on having that a situation that would be financially beneficial to him. So reports come out that Snyder does not want any part of Bezos putting in a bid, and of course, as we've seen later this afternoon, these reports have been refuted, saying that this might have been just a tactic to potentially get bigger bids out of potential buyers, as Bezos seems very much alive in this potentially way to become an NFL owner. So, Lee, I've got to ask you, with all the drama with Daniel Snyder right now, Jeff Bezos definitely seems like the front runner and potentially the favorite to buy this franchise. And of course, we're far from anything being said to be final about this. But what are your feelings on this? Do you feel that Bezos would be a good NFL owner? Do you think it might be a conflict of interest with him owning Thursday Night Football and Amazon? Your thoughts?
You basically hit on what I was going to say. I said Jeff Bezos owning the Commanders would be a huge conflict of interest. That would, with him owning Amazon, which is who owns the rights to Thursday Night Football.
But I'll also bring this up. As much scandal as Daniel Snyder's been bringing onto the Washington franchise, it's got to be a breath of fresh air to get somebody that actually has pretty deep pockets. And I don't have any doubt is going to go and try and get the best for this franchise. So, realistically, I mean, your take, do you think that Bezos is the best option, or do you feel that there's someone else out there that's more acquitted and more set up to handle this franchise going forward?
As you said, Jeff Bezos has some really deep pockets. What could he do if he took over this team? You're talking about a possible new stadium there in just outside Landover, Maryland, which is, of course, where the stadium is. You're talking about, as I said, a possible new stadium. He could come in and finance that whole stadium on his own. Stan Kroenke did in LA.
And I mean, that's a very viable option, but I do think that it's also an option that, the deed to the old RFK Stadium would potentially also be into play, where you could actually have that handed back to Bezos, where it was taken when Snyder took over the franchise. You could potentially have the Washington franchise back in the DMV.
Yeah. But it's going back to what I said. Bezos owning the Commanders would be a huge conflict of interest. And I see why Snyder does not want to.
I mean, realistically, though, the closest bid that Snyder's gotten that's come out was about $5.5 billion. At least $2 billion short of what he's trying to get for the franchise, potentially looking for about a $7 billion investment to get him to move on. But also, we can't rule out that the owners could very well vote out Snyder if they were forced to. So, which do you think would happen first? Would the team be sold, or would Snyder be forced out?
I think with everything that's came out about Snyder, the likely thing is he's voted out as the owner of the Washington Commanders.
And I very well see that as well. I mean, it's a viable option going forward. I think Snyder has definitely just been a big black eye for the league in general, especially the ownership. I can't speak for all owners, especially how they feel, but realistically, it seems like that needle could potentially be moving forward to a vote coming soon, maybe even potentially with these upcoming spring owners meetings. So I do feel, with that also being a conflict of interest, I would have to say Washington just needs a break.
Yeah.
It can't really get any worse for them. They're kind of on the upslope with some good things happening. I think Eric Bieniemy going there is going to breathe some fresh perspective into an offense that's just been stagnant. They've already cut loose a Carson Wentz that just seems like he's never going to get back to the player that he was. So, I'd like to see Washington get the rare win, especially when it comes to just getting kicked and being the punchline in the league for the last decade now.
Yeah, 100%.
But whatever happens, it's going to be a situation we'll keep an eye on. And of course, it will be an interesting one as the offseason progresses. And also, guys, once again, thank you so much for checking us out and watching the show. Shout out to the boss as he joins the show, Tighten Up Low Network. Make sure you do tighten up that like button, as we say here. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow on all of our platforms. But getting back to the news going forward, Daniel Jones has said that he wants to be one of the top paid quarterbacks, looking to potentially get about $45 million. That seems to be the deal going forward. So, Lee, realistically, is Daniel Jones worth being one of the top 5 paid quarterbacks?
Based off last season, you could make a case for it, but you have to look at his work up to then. I would say no. I would say that he deserves no more than probably 20, 25 a year.
And starting on that, would you give him more guaranteed money or would you give him a bigger signing bonus?
I would say give him a bigger signing bonus.
And I think it's hard to try and defend him getting $45 million a year. Yes, he has one good year with Brian Dable. I think Brian Dable is a fantastic head coach. And I think realistically, he's the kind of coach you give any kind of quarterback and he'll find a way to make him successful. Daniel Jones, however, I know his skill set is kind of limited at this point. And would you think it would be a fair comparison to call him kind of a Kirk Cousins type player?
No, I would not.
And could you go further with that? I mean, I ask that because, Daniel Jones seemingly turns his career around, whereas Kirk Cousins just seems to be kind of stuck in limbo.
Well, I feel like first Kirk Cousins is probably on the back end of his career. He's played a lot of places, with this most recent being Minnesota. Minnesota, for the first time in a long time, has won the NFC North.
And viable points. And Lou, man, I'm not saying Daniel Jones is Kirk Cousins by any means. I'm saying there's tendencies there. I look at Daniel Jones and I kind of see somebody that has those tendencies that Kirk Cousins flashed early in his career, especially in Washington. Now, do I think that Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins? That's still debatable. As Lee put, Kirk Cousins is very well kind of just right at the tail end of his career. And I'll be honest about that. I do think that that's the case with Kirk Cousins. Daniel Jones, however, I think if you take him out of Brian Dable's system and put him elsewhere, he's not going to succeed. You've got just a basic run-of-the-mill, maybe a strong second-tier quarterback.
Yeah.
So, just to finish this out, and I think this would be the best place to finish. So, Lee, realistically, what is the best contract you would give for Daniel Jones if you were the Giants GM? And everybody in the chat, you can chime in as well. I'd love to know what your take is. Kirk Cousins, you're the GM. Let me know what you think he's worth.
So, one, it would depend on cap space with the Giants. That's the biggest number right now, is what do the Giants have in cap space? I would say probably the ballpark of probably 4 years. I would say 90 or 95 million, with probably 47 guaranteed.
Okay, I could see that. I think that's realistically, I think that puts him in the ballpark of getting guaranteed money, and I think that's the biggest pitch. You get the guaranteed money, and it helps move the needle forward. And realistically, I just think the Giants just don't have a lot out there that they could really just fill in. There's too many quarterbacks out there in free agency that would be well more expensive than what Daniel Jones is.
Yeah.
And Ryan Harris brings up about a 4-year, $80 million. And, Ryan, I'm about in the same boat. I'd give him maybe about a 4-year, 80, 81 million. I think realistically that fits what the Giants need. They lock him down. I think you give him more guaranteed money just as kind of as a sign of good favor. Because
Yeah.
realistically, I think Daniel Jones comes back and they end up losing Saquon Barkley. But that's
Which
just my take.
that's not a good thing for the Giants.
It's not, but realistically, the Giants are in a good position to draft a running back, and there's a
Yeah.
really good running back coming out of Texas.
Robinson.
So, not a bad option for the Giants to have in their back pocket, but realistically, they're not a team that's going to be able to chase any of the top tier quarterbacks in free agency. I think you've got to stick with what you know, and I think Brian Dable is comfortable with at least keeping Jones for at least maybe a 3 or 4 year run. It doesn't hurt anything, but realistically, the Giants really aren't in a position to chase after anybody that they can't commit to for at least a 3-year term.
Yeah.
And finishing everything off, of course, the XFL. The ratings are absolutely abysmal. Reality is setting in. But Lee, I've got to admit, even with everything going against them, the XFL is making a little bit of noise for all the right reasons. It's intriguing when a league can come out with new ideas and new ways to do things and definitely help move the needle forward, especially for the NFL. So, the XFL, as bad as things are when it comes to ratings and trying to get butts in seats right now, it's a slow process. But
Yeah.
you got to admit,
100%.
they're getting in the news. So, how's this going to keep moving forward, especially with the XFL acting as kind of a amateur league for the NFL?
Well, the one thing that I would do, I'm just gonna go here with this. I would use the XFL as as you say, like a developmental league, but also test out rules that the NFL wants to implement.
And that definitely be in play, especially with the first weeks of the season. As we've seen, the XFL's practiced out the potential of having a 3-point line, and we see the difference of what it could make, especially in a game that's far out of reach. You also look at what the XFL has been doing with reversing the onside kick, where you basically have a 4th and 15 where the team
From
has
your own
potential.
25.
Exactly. Keep possession of the ball, and that makes things more exciting. And I want to know what y'all think in the chat. I mean, have any of you watched any of the XFL games? How do you feel? Do you feel that these new potential rules, are they going to be something to get implemented in the NFL? So, Lee, I'll ask you the same question. Do you see any of these new potential rule changes in the XFL move forward in the NFL?
One thing that I would do, the review process in the NFL is extremely suspicious. And of course, you see how the XFL does it. They have a camera in the booth, in the review booth. The NFL needs to let the fans know, hey, this is what's going on.
So basically, give just a more in depth look of what's going on between what they're trying to review and make just a better judgment call.
Yes, 100%. Because the NFL this last season, there were a lot of suspicious calls.
And would you attribute that to bad officiating, or would you attribute that to just
Bad officiating, hands down.
and understandable? I do think it's a problem, especially when officiating just is a part-time gig in a league that's full-time. It's just
Yeah.
never made sense to me. So, looking at the chat real quick, because I definitely want to get everybody's take. Our buddy Ryan Harris from the Jump Pass podcast, make sure you check that out as another one of our Titan Upload affiliates. I like the XFL so far. It's not good football, but the NFL at times wasn't promoting a good product. And that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Bryce Pratt says the XFL is fire, so we have a fan on one side of that. Ryan also says, I liked how they show the locker rooms during the halftime break. I mean, as that's played, I just think that that's just kind of a sacred area. But that's just my perspective.
It would be considered, like, in my mind, like a distraction.
And I agree. I just feel there's certain areas that the fans should just be omitted from. And I sound old school like that, but that's just my mind process. Everybody's
Yeah.
entitled to their opinion. You know, if they think that that'll help move the narrative in the NFL, it's whatever. But realistically, I've never been a fan of anything that kind of distracting. But if you like it, more power to you. But however, the XFL continues to struggle because it's a narrative where you're looking at a league that's full of just basically just good enough players for their level, but they never made it out in the NFL.
I would say the XFL is more like NFL castaways.
And we've seen them shine, like, AJ McCarron, and especially with Josh Gordon. He's actually been shining on the platform. So, I mean, do you feel that there's any NFL players right now that could potentially benefit from going to the XFL for maybe a year and rebuilding their stock? I would have to think maybe an Antonio Brown might potentially revitalize his career if he was willing to.
AB, maybe. Another guy that you could look at is maybe a guy like a Stetson Bennett.
And I would think that that's also another option. And I mean, we do also have the USFL, which is going to be coming down the pike a little later in the year. And we'll potentially discuss that. But I think one appeal that the USFL will have is potentially drafting sophomores out of college, just like they did back in the 80s.
And allowing them to, like, develop for about a year.
I would say a year or 2 years. And I think that helped elevate a lot of players coming through football. You saw what happened, when Jim Kelly went there. You had Reggie White, you had Steve Young. Players went there and succeeded at a level and then ended up going back to the NFL after the league folded. And you saw how that really helped develop them and prepare them for the professional game.
Like, there's a name. I don't know if he went to the XFL or USFL. Gavante Turnpine.
I'd have to say he was an XFL player, if I'm correct. If anybody knows in the chat, you can correct me. And
But
Ryan brings up Carson Wentz. Ryan, it seems like Carson's going to be heading down that way, or potentially to the USFL. So,
another name I'd probably say is like a Sam Ellinger.
I could see that. But
or if you wanted to go to the college ranks, Haynes King, who's now at Georgia Tech.
I mean, maybe Max Dugan from TCU could potentially go there. I think he's going to be low in the NFL draft, unless he just has a spectacular combine, which I'm not going to hold my breath. And that's just not me knocking him. That's just really what most analysts are saying. But the XFL is going to continue to just pick up a little bit of pace. I don't think people were going to embrace it just right then and there. But I do think The Rock's a good businessman. And I think that kind of potential business with partnering with the NFL to build something to move players up and give them hope and having dreams on a bigger stage and performing on a bigger stage is the end goal of what most athletes want. The XFL is a professional league, but it's a semi-professional league. And we'll just be honest and call it what it is. So I don't think it's going to... I think it'll pick up steam, especially going down. And maybe if the football gets better. That's going to be just the selling point going forward. Is the football going to get better? But I do think what we've seen, especially with the rules and with the situations in play, it has the potential. So we could see a lot better football, especially later in the year, if the XFL continues to thrive at the position where we think we have an opportunity to see something come from it. But realistically, Lee, we all know the XFL is what it is, and it's just going to be something that grows with time.
Yeah, it will. It'll grow over time.
And Al Pierce says it's exactly what Malik Willis needs. I mean, we'll see what Tim Kelly can do with him, Al. I mean, it's a tall order, but I mean, it's what we got at this point. Well, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, Lee and I are going to break down the quarterback carousel of the NFL for 2023. We've got a few ideas where some of these guys might be going, and some of them might surprise you. So don't go anywhere. I'm Michael Bishop. This is Lee Hillis of the 615 Podcast, and we'll be right back after this 30-second break. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and my co-host, Lee Hillis, is joining us tonight. Thank you so much for joining the Power Hour on this Monday night. As always, you guys are fantastic. It's because of you we keep being successful, we keep growing, and we're going to hit some major stratospheres as this offseason continues, as we head into this new upcoming NFL year. Very excited to have you on the show, Lee, as my co-host, and of course, as our newest partner and friend of the Titan Upload Network. We've got a lot of great things that we're going to be setting up down the pike. Lee, as always, got to let you shout out the fans and let them know where to find all your great Titan Upload Network content.
Yeah. So, of course, Twitter's a big one at podcast615, Instagram at _615 podcast, Spotify, the615. And of course, that's about it now. For now.
But trust me, we've got a lot of things coming down the pikes. And of course, guys, before we hit our next segment, gotta let you know, little secret, but I know you can keep a secret. On March 1st, the Titan Upload Network will officially launch on YouTube. That's right. The Titan Upload Network will also be housed under YouTube. We will have one house, one family. We are locking everybody down where you can find all your favorite Titan contributors, Titan Upload, Titan Rossi, Ryan Harris of the Jump Pass Podcast, Brian Johannes, our draft expert, of course, our good friend James of Titans for Life, giving us the best inside sources we could get. And, of course, Lee Hillis of the 615 Jump Pass joins that. And, of course, also my co-host for the Power Hour. So we're going to be all under one roof on YouTube. We're really excited about that. We're growing the brand. We're being bigger, better, stronger, faster. And we want you all to be a part of it. So don't forget that. On March 1st, the Titan Upload Network launches on YouTube. It's Titan Upload's old channel, but we're bringing new flash. We're bringing new ideas. We're bringing fresh perspectives for you, the fans, because we want this to be a network that you're proud of. We want to be your number one source for not only Tennessee Titans news and information, but also for NFL news and information as well. And we're super excited about it. All right, guys. Lee, it's time to jump into it. Going into the 2023 year, there's a lot of quarterback carousel concerns going, but we're going to break them down as we So let's start with it, Lee. We've got new faces and new places in 2023, and there's a lot of interesting and intriguing free agent quarterbacks that are be heading into this year. So
Or
let's go ahead and start with our first one. But
or
I'll
even
let you,
trades. Or even trades.
can't forget about trades. That's why I brought him in, everybody. This man, he finishes my sentence. He is the peanut butter to my jelly. That's why he makes this show even more successful than it already is. We're hitting new heights and we're rolling on it. So, Lee, let's hit into it. Our first potential move, and I think this is a very obvious one. Derek Carr is being courted by the Jets, but I realistically think if Derek Carr wants to be successful, that if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can clean up their salary cap situation, Derek Carr could be a very good replacement for Tom Brady.
I'm going to stick with what we're hearing from media. I'm sticking with Derek Carr to the Jets.
And to just elaborate on that a little further, why do you think Derek Carr would be a better fit with the Jets?
Well, if you've looked at where teams have him ranked, Jets are highly, highly favored or favorited for Derek Carr.
But
And
I will. Okay, go
in
ahead.
my mind, he is an upgrade over Mike White and Zach Wilson.
Interesting, but I will have to lead Corso you and not so fast, my friend.
Not so
As,
fast, my friend.
as I do think that Derek Carr could potentially fit in well with the Jets, I do have to bring up this point. Tampa Bay has much better weapons. They have players with Super Bowl experience. So realistically, I look at a defense that is very much on the terms of potentially getting themselves on a situation where they just need a quarterback to get them there. I see Derek Carr kind of almost, and this isn't meant to be an insult, but I do think if they could find somebody with above Trent Dilfer tendencies, this team has the defense and the playmakers even on wide receiver to
Make another
potentially
run.
get. They could. But let us know what you've heard in the chat while we're talking about that. But Lee, I'm of course, as my co-host, I need you to prove me wrong on this. So tell me, why are the Jets the better option?
Well, the Jets, they have they're an up and coming team. They have in my mind, an above average defense. They've got weapons. I think they're getting CJ Uzama back, the former Cincinnati Bengal. They're most likely to probably bring back Corey Davis. They have Elijah Moore in an up and coming young wide receiver. They've got Garrett Wilson.
And I mean, those are fair argument points.
And don't forget, they have running back Brees Hall coming back.
That's true. And I mean, of course, I would also have to say that you look at the situation the Jets are in, they've drafted very well. So I would also add that into your argument. But I don't know. I mean, I feel the Bucks are the best fit. I think the weapons are there. I think the coordinator's there. And I think Bruce Arians, even though not much involvement on the field, I still think has a very strong hand in what goes on.
Yes.
So it wouldn't surprise me.
You could use that as a case for Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians. He's coaching this league. Now he's in the front office.
And Ryan Harris bringing up a good point. Trent Dilfer did play for the Bucks as well. So
and won a Super Bowl, I think.
I think that was Brad Johnson on that one. So
Oh yeah.
But Ryan Harris brings up this point. The Jets do have a better defense, which Carr has never had in his career, and I think that's a fair argument. But I would also say, if the Buccaneers defense was healthy, I think they could just match what the Jets have on defense.
Yeah. And for me, that could go either way. He could go to the Jets or the Buccaneers. But the thing is, yeah, he has weapons. He has Cameron Brate. He has Mike Evans. He's got playoff Leonard Fournette. Playoff Lenny. Just to name a few.
And I mean, of course, you have, I believe there's no sales tax in Florida. Isn't that a situation as well?
I don't think so.
So that might be a little more enticing. New York taxes are quite high. But regardless of whatever team we feel going forward, Derek Carr is going to be courted, and of course, Lee is going to stick with the Jets. I will go with the Bucks. Give us your opinion as well. We'll continue and move on because we have many more to discuss. And the next one, I feel, it's almost crazy not to happen. Aaron Rodgers has been linked to the Jets quite a lot, but the Raiders just make too much sense.
He would be back with Devontae Adams. Darren Waller at tight end. Josh Jacobs in that backfield. Hunter Renfrow. Mac Hollis maybe.
And the thing is, this just looks like a Raiders kind of deal. This is the kind of deals that Al Davis would go out and be aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
It's flash, it's catchy, it's newsworthy. And Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career is a gritty individual, and he just screams Raider to me.
Yeah. And this is one of the ones we agree on.
Lou Man jumping in with his opinion saying Rodgers to Tampa Bay. And I don't think it's a bad option, Lou Man. I just think realistically, Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to go anywhere where anyone else has had success. And realistically, I think he's trying to avoid that. It's been hard enough for him to get out of Brett Favre's shadow. I don't think he wants to go somewhere where Tom Brady's had that exact presence.
And that's the reason I'm keeping Rodgers away from the Jets.
And that's the same reason as well. I just think from a chemistry standpoint, he's just there for maybe a year or two. I don't see him being the good teammate. He just wants to be somewhere where he can just play.
I feel like Rodgers may have another year or two.
And Ryan, I know Josh McDaniels and Aaron Rodgers seem like an odd pairing. But realistically, Josh McDaniels is just going to let Aaron Rodgers do his thing.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, Aaron Rodgers is old enough to be the offensive coordinator. So I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I think this is going to come down to a Mark Davis decision. It screams what's something the Davis family would do, and this move just makes too much sense. Hitting our next move, of course, I think this is definitely going to be intriguing for some people. Jimmy Garoppolo, of course, could stay with the 49ers, but I think this could be a very expensive move for them, especially knowing that they've got a franchise quarterback in the wings with Brock Purdy if he can recover well from his situation and surgery. But, of course, you have to think Jimmy Garoppolo staying around for another year, it's going to get expensive. And I look at the best team that he could fit with, it's the Jets. I like him in this system. I think he's the kind of guy that goes in, doesn't have to do everything. He fits the mold.
I'm going to have to pull Lee Corso on you. Not so fast, my friend. I have Jimmy G going to Baltimore. Because, look, they just hired Todd Monken from the University of Georgia.
Agreed.
He likes those big-bodied, upper-bodied quarterbacks.
Okay.
And in my mind, Jimmy G is like a Joe Flacco, like a Joe Flacco from his younger days. And Baltimore has the weapons. You have Mark Andrews at tight end. You've got Devin Duvernay. You've got a slew of running backs in the backfield. J.K. Dobbins, just to name one of them.
Now, let's expand on this. How do you feel Jimmy Garoppolo fits in an offense that really doesn't have a star receiver?
Well, look at what he did in San Francisco. There were not many big names out there outside of George Kittle.
Well, what about you've got Juwan Jennings. What about Debo Samuels? I mean, that's kind of an unfair comparison.
You could throw those two in there. You could throw those two in there, but those guys weren't huge names when they came to the league
True, but
until they really got 2 to 3 years under their belt. They really weren't household names like some of these guys in Baltimore. They're not household names outside of Mark Andrews.
and that's a fair arguing point. But I'll also bring up, if we're going to bring up a coordinator position, then I have to bring up Nathaniel Hackett, and I think Nathaniel Hackett and Jimmy Garoppolo would work better because they understand each other's skill set. I like the fact that the Jets have weapons. Baltimore really doesn't have much of weapons. Now, Baltimore's defense, I think it's below, I'd put it about at average at this point. I don't think Baltimore's defense is what it used to be. The Jets,
No,
however, are contending. They're fighting to contend. And I think you put Jimmy Garoppolo in a situation with good wide receivers. You drafted a few other pieces around him. The defense continues to grow and get better. It's a great situation. And I just
but
don't think the Jets are seeing it as that standpoint because they're tunnel vision to just try and nail the big star.
but you also have to look at who the Jets passing game coordinator is. Todd Downing.
True, but I mean, who's really going to be doing the play calling?
He, of course, Hackett would have full control of the play calling, but you have to look at the passing game coordinator. He
I
would
mean,
have a hand. He would have a hand in the passing game.
in a sense,
And
but I do think Jimmy Garoppolo and what Ryan Tannehill's skill sets are, they're different. So I'd have to point that also as well. But realistically, I think it's a good fit on either end. Baltimore to me just I don't think there's enough weapons for him. That's asking him to do too much. I think you put him on the Jets. The Jets have already tried to just make a playoff push in last year. They're really a quarterback away. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo checks all the boxes they need. But that's why we're here to debate this and to have strong opinions about this. But at the end of the day, we'll find a way to find what's best to entertain the audience and to give them the best insight. But of course, this one's definitely going to get a lot of people's attention. As we know, Ryan Tannehill is also been rumored in a lot of trade talks. And of course, in the Titan Upload Network, we've had a lot of our sources come out and say that there have been discussions, especially with certain teams. Unfortunately, as we can't give a lot of information out on that, I would say one team that a lot of people shouldn't be surprised if it comes to fruition, Arthur Smith's relation with Ryan Tannehill. Of course, it could be a situation where the Falcons draft a quarterback. But why would they do that? Arthur Smith has had a great relationship with Ryan Tannehill. Arthur Smith really helped Ryan Tannehill succeed with his time as the offensive coordinator. So, Lee, let's just take it from here. Is this a good fit or not?
I did not have Tannehill going to Atlanta. I had him going to the NFC South. I had him heading to Tampa Bay. You're probably wondering, well, why? Why?
Well, of course I am. Don't leave me in suspense.
As you'd mentioned about Derek Carr or whoever you had going to the Bucks. I think it was Derek Carr, wasn't it?
I did.
You mentioned they've got weapons. They also have the defense to complement what they have offensively. Am I saying that Ryan Tannehill is Tom Brady reincarnate? No. But Ryan Tannehill has a different skill set that I feel like would fit in that system there in Tampa Bay.
And I won't argue that, there are better playmakers at this point right now than what Atlanta has. But, I think that Atlanta is in position to add around Ryan Tannehill if they go down that road. I don't think it's going to be expensive to try and make that trade.
But I do actually have a quarterback going to Atlanta later on.
Oh, the suspense is killing me. But before we get to that one, and I'll say this, Atlanta is going to have to try and find a better solution going forward. I do think, as you said, Tampa Bay's a good fit. I think Atlanta's a good fit. Ryan Harris brings up another good fit, and I think this could also come to fruition. Carolina comes into the fold.
Frank Reich.
I mean, if we really wanted to get technical, the Saints could get involved. Anybody in the NFC South just about needs a quarterback. So I think Lee comes on the side where the Tampa Bay Bucks have more weapons that he needs. I think the relationship with Atlanta works better. I would have to say Ryan might be going with Carolina because they do have some good offensive weapons, and I do think Frank Wright is a good quarterbacks coach. He just needs the right quarterback.
But yeah, like if you look at his time in Indianapolis, he had the true quarterback carousel.
And Mr. Jones, I mean, I don't know what Vrabel wants right now. We just know that going forward, Burks is going to be involved with the offense. Chig will be involved with the offense. It's the money. Do the Titans want to invest one more year in a player where they're going to have to continue to build an offensive line around him? Is it worth keeping him around for 1 year? And I'm not debating that. I'm one of the people that thinks it's important, especially the fact that Tannehill's been one of the best quarterbacks the Titans have had since Steve McNair. And I will say that. You can debate me on that, but I've got the stats to back it up. Realistically, the problem is Tannehill hasn't got the job done. And yes, he's won games. I'm not debating that either. I'm debating the fact he hasn't won the big games. Yes, he's won a division game. Yes, he's won a wild card game. But realistically,
he's 2-3 in the playoffs in Tennessee.
Let's call him what he is. He's an average quarterback in the playoffs. Peyton Manning is an average quarterback in the playoffs.
But he found a way to win the big one.
And once again,
Hill hasn't.
It's not debating his stats. It's where we're trying to go. Look at me and tell me that Ryan Tannehill can get the job done and bring the Vince Lombardi back to Nashville. That's what I'm trying to make my point.
I think if Tannehill goes, you might as well roll with Malik or Josh Dobbs.
And Ryan bringing up stats here too. Lost his last two home playoff games with 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Once again, Mr. Jones, it's not a debate about who hasn't done what. Ryan Tannehill has been given some amazing opportunities that a lot of quarterbacks don't get. Number 1 seed, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. Home playoff game. We can't just forget that. That game happened. It's not being unappreciative of what he's done. It's being honest. And Ryan Tannehill didn't get the job done. And if the Titans are going to try and be serious about potentially adding somebody to help elevate Derrick Henry's game, then they might have to go out and try and find somebody that's going to get them there. And the real truth is, that might not be an option either. The Titans might be starting from scratch, and we don't know. But realistically, with the debate right here, I like the Falcons. Lee likes the Bucks. And of course, our good friend Ryan Harris thinks Carolina's an option, but we'll move the narrative forward because we do have a few more to get to. I think Lamar Jackson's done in Baltimore. I think that the talks are going to sour. It's going to get worse.
It's going to be like the AJ Brown situation, but with Lamar.
Well, the problem is the talks are happening. It's going in reverse, especially for a player that's representing himself. That being
Which is not a good thing.
Well, I don't. It's whatever the player feels is best in their interest, but my whole takeaway is if I need my sink fixed, I'm going to hire somebody that's good at plumbing. I'm not going to bring in somebody that gives me like directions off a YouTube video. Now, looking at every situation, the Bears are in the best situation out of every team. They've got the pick. They've got the capital. They have the money.
If you look at what Justin Fields did in that system is built for a mobile quarterback.
It is. And that's why I like this to happen. Lamar Jackson works here with the Bears because the Bears have the money to pay him.
And he also has weapons there. Darnell Mooney.
They have very young weapons for him to succeed. They've got a defense that's being rebuilt. I like this because the Bears have all the intangibles that Lamar Jackson needs to be successful.
I agree. Of course, I said Chicago too.
And I mean, realistically, we can't talk about that with potentially what goes. And I think with this, the Bears could potentially trade their first pick. And of course, along with that, I would add Justin Fields to the mix. And Baltimore finds themselves in a better position. So basically, it's a quarterback swap. They get a younger quarterback with a very good skill set, with an offensive coordinator that I think is going to help unleash his real true potential. And that also helps the Ravens in a key position. They're not investing $50 million into one player, especially in a salary cap year where they're trying to add pieces.
And then again, in the words of Lee Corso, not so fast. I have Justin Fields going to Atlanta.
And Atlanta definitely has the pieces there. Do you think he fits well in an Arthur Smith system?
The mobility is a huge thing for me, but he also has the arm to do it too. Like what we saw with Tannehill under Arthur Smith.
And I don't debate that. I just think if I'm the Ravens, I know the best move for me is I know I can't afford to pay what Lamar Jackson's looking for. And it's unfortunate. But realistically, they can't franchise tag him either. It's too steep. So they're really in a position that they did not need to put themselves into. So it's like I said with Aaron Rodgers last year. Cash your chips in. Know your player's worth and cash in. It's not a bad situation for Baltimore to be in. You're basically doing what Detroit and the Rams did a few years ago. You're quarterback swapping. You're basically starting from scratch. You get a quarterback with playmaking abilities. And not only that, you're able to put some more money on the books and build for the future. And Lou Man coming out and saying that Lamar Jackson will be a Packer. I mean, that could be a possibility too, Lou Man. But I mean, if the Packers love Jordan Love so much, we'll just have to wait and see on that one. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is kind of just holding everything. But luckily, he's emerged from his darkroom. So it's a start. And to finish things off, and I give Lee this one because realistically, I still haven't made up my mind with this situation. But Lee, this is your pick right here. You feel that Trey Lance is the future of the Tennessee Titans, so I will give you the floor.
Yeah, what I see with Trey Lance, he has the ability. We've seen him play in San Francisco. He's got potential to be great in the right system. I feel like Trey Lance, if he's put in the right system, like a Tim Kelly offense, he could be the future of this franchise, like Deshaun Watson was in Houston under Tim Kelly.
So I can agree with that with the Tim Kelly situation. We've seen what he did with Deshaun Watson, and that was when they didn't even have a running game. I will say this, however, Lance still is raw. Do you think that with what he's put up so far, that he can improve himself to be a more viable quarterback, especially when it comes to completion percentage, which is something that every quarterback has to have to be successful? You at least have to be throwing about 69% or completing 69% of your passes. Do you think he's capable of that?
Oh, 100%. I think you have to have a change of scenery, one, to get better at what you do.
Now, that being said, I like the matchup with Chicago. I like the fact that he gets Traylon Burks, who's going to continue to grow.
You get
The biggest thing,
possibility of you could get the possibility of someone like a Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee.
and I mean, a possibility as well. And Ryan brings up a good point here. He brings up the issue is Brock Purdy. And I mean, that's a very big situation going on right now, especially with the shoulder situation. It's going to be maybe potentially mid-season if he could come back. But I know some people are saying that it could be right at training camp, depending on how he heals.
Yes.
So that situation up in the air right now. Do you think that the Niners can afford to trade him, especially not knowing what Brock Purdy's situation is?
Well, if I'm John Lynch, I have to look at what's in this draft class. There's a bigger version in Anthony Richardson, or as Mr. Jones said, Hendon Hooker, who's, by what I'm hearing, could be back in time for training camp.
So, putting your GM hat on, what is Trey Lance worth if you're a Rand Carthon situation?
In my mind, with the way he's played, I say he's probably worth a second, maybe, or a third, and maybe throw in something in the fourth round in 2024. Like a third round that becomes a conditional second, and a fourth round pick from 2024.
Okay. I don't hate the deal. I think it's something that could be discussed going forward. I mean, realistically, I kicked a lot of ideas around for myself who I think the Titans could go after at this point. I just don't have an answer right now.
But if the Titans
And
stay at 11, if the Titans don't trade out of 11, you have to look at this offensive line. A guy like a Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern, a Broderick Jones out of Georgia.
true, but I have had the debate where I feel that you have to have playmakers to be successful.
And that's
And
where
where
a guy
somebody,
like there's a couple of guys, Jordan Addison from USC,
Quentin
or
Johnson,
Quentin Johnston out of TCU.
Lou Mance trade mind, 4 White Castles and cheese fries through in an orange soda. Lou Man, I think you're just kind of burying that trade. I think you can at least get a dessert in there as well. Shoot. If you're going to shoot for the stars, man. I'm just saying. Mr. Jones bringing up Cedric Tillman, Tennessee Vols' #2 wide receiver. And that's also a potential guy.
Jalen Hyatt or Cedric Tillman.
I mean, we definitely have like reports that Hyatt's draft stock's going up, and I think it's a situation that'll continue to be monitored. But I don't think they're bad options at all.
No.
And shout out to Titans and Truth for joining us on the show. Good seeing you, man. Been a little while, but we're glad to have you on the show. So thank you for joining us. So I think it's a good pick, Lee. But on my end, I'm going to have to wait till after the combine so I can maybe have a better idea. I think a lot's going to play out. I don't think it's a situation that's not impossible.
No.
I just think right now there's a lot of options to weigh for the Titans moving forward. And Titans and Truth bringing up the point, Lance probably won't be traded with Purdy out for the 2023 season, which was another point we brought up. But it's also up in that situation. You can't handle the truth. Shout out to you as well. Good seeing everybody in the show. Great show coming back. Well, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and we come back. We're going to close up shop. As great as the show's been, we got to send you on your way, but that's okay. That just makes for better shows coming forward. I'm Michael Bishop. He's Lee Hillis of the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and my co-host next to me, Lee Hillis of the 615 Podcast. You're watching the Power Hour on this fine Monday evening, and we thank you for taking the time out to join us. It's because of you make the show grow, and because caring is sharing as well. Make sure you share the show because you love us and you want the show to be in the view of other Titans fans, but also NFL fans in general. We're trying to grow out there for you guys and give you a better show and a better experience. That's what we do here at the Titan Upload Network. And don't forget, guys, as we said earlier, the Titan Upload Network is going viral. March 1st, we will launch our YouTube channel, as the Titan Upload Network will be available also on YouTube, home of all your favorite Titan Upload content creators. We're going to continue to build this thing and make it bigger, better, stronger for you, the fans. So, of course, as of always, without your consent, without your support, we wouldn't be where we are today. And it's going to be a big 2023 for us going forward. We're excited to have Lee from the 615 Podcast, of course, being a co-host on this show. Lee, we're killing it, man. But as of always, we've got to close up shop and send everybody on their way. So what do you say? Let's just get the door closed and get everybody on their way as we talk about our last few bits.
Closing time.
Good night, losers.
And of course, got to start it out with some Titan news that dropped today as the Titans cut quite a few players, but noticeably our good friend Bobby Trees on his way to wherever he goes. Of course, dropping that cute little tweet at the end, free. So, Lee, I gotta ask your thoughts.
Well, Woods wasn't the same. He wasn't the same after tearing his ACL. And if you, of course, I'm going to mention another name that was released, Taylor Lewan. He had the same injury 2 times in 3 years. After the first one, he wasn't the same.
I mean, I'm not going to be upset at somebody that didn't get their due. The man came and thought that this was going to be a system that he would thrive in and really just put his talent on showcase. But it didn't work out that way, and I get it. It just comes off petty, and I see that from a fan standpoint. I'd be upset too, knowing that it's just like, well, yeah, I meant that much to you. You know, my team meant that much to you. So I get that standpoint. But realistically, it's also hard going forward, knowing that just that's how some receivers are going to feel, especially in an offense that's featured just to be exclusively running.
Yeah.
So how is that going to be easy to sell future, you know, free agent candidates to potentially come to this team, knowing that they're just potentially there to block?
It'd be hard. It'd be hard to convince a top 5 wide receiver to come to Tennessee, knowing, as you said, knowing that we run the ball more than anything, and that pretty much all they are is like a glorified blocker at wide receiver.
And that being said, I understand the frustration on his part, but sometimes don't write checks out to people that's going to basically bounce on you. And this was one of those that just bounced on him. I get
Yeah.
the frustration. I get the fact that he was upset that he didn't get utilized in an offense to where he was going to be showcased in his mind. So I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but I do think, and this is a lesson for anybody in general, if you're going to tweet something, remember, don't hit that send button unless you really mean it. Because I promise you, everybody's going to interpret that whatever way they want to.
Yeah.
But all that aside, looking at his future going forward, where would Bobby Trees fit in best? With what team?
Great question. I'm stumped with that question. There's a couple teams. Probably Detroit. Maybe somewhere like New York or Tampa Bay.
Lou Man goes with Atlanta, which wouldn't be a bad idea. Mr. Jones says the London Silly Nannies, which I would be an interesting sight. I just don't think they look very equipped for football, Mr. Jones. Just my 2 cents, though. I would have to say the Ravens might be an interesting option, especially if you're trying to find a way to keep Lamar Jackson. He's not your best number one option receiver, but at least he's going to have somebody that they can throw the ball to
Yeah.
probably more consistently.
Outside of a Mark Andrews.
So Bobby Trees definitely going to get some free agent interest going forward. I wouldn't even rule the Rams out at this point if he would go on a smaller, more affordable deal. But
What about the Chargers? Because there's word that Keenan Allen will be gone, or Mike Williams.
yeah, but would you want to replace Keenan Allen with Bobby Trees? I'm just being honest.
It'd be a more affordable option.
Affordable, yes. Playmaking ability,
No.
no. That's kind of like downgrading from
AJ Brown to
Nick Westbrook Akina,
yeah.
which we know all too well. So I'm just playing, guys. If you can't laugh at yourselves, it's going to be a rough road ahead, but I promise it'll be okay. But Bobby Trees definitely has a lot of free agent options going forward, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And guys, of course, we're going to close this one out with, of course, our first and inaugural Lee Hillis' final thoughts. And Lee, it's been a busy week for you. It's been a roller coaster of a week. A lot of things have been going on. And I just wanted to give you this little time just to talk to the fans and just give some encouragement and just get some things off your chest if you needed to. Because this is just as much your show as it is mine. That's why you're here. I love your insight. I love the fact that you're going to just give your opinion. This is your stage, Lee, and I'm giving it to you.
Yeah. As Michael said, it's been a rough week. So we lost my grandfather on Saturday morning, and it's been hard. If I'm being completely honest, it's been hard. It's been an emotional 2 or 3 days, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because, of course, last week I wasn't sleeping well because my mom and my stepdad had made the trip down to Tennessee to be there when he passed. And I was every time I laid down, I would be like, I want to get the message that he's gone. Sure enough, Saturday it was about almost 1 o'clock here, so it was almost noon there in Tennessee. And my mom sent me a message saying, "Daddy's gone," which is my mom's dad, and it's of course we're getting ready for the funeral this week, on Saturday. And so if I could just say anything, it would be hold your loved ones near because you never know how much time you have left.
And that's important to remember, everybody. And we all have to remember that in life, there's people that are in our lives, and that time's short and it's fleeting. And as much as we love sports and we talk about sports because it's one of our passions here, it's never going to be our end all be all. There's always family, there's loved ones, and we encourage that, especially on these discussions on the show. And that's just part of life. Our biggest thing is to let you go out in the world feeling educated, informed, and enlightened. That's always been the mission of this show. And, thank you so much for everybody's support for Lee. And we hope everything goes well with the funeral and with everything that everybody's going through. It's a hard situation. And we've all been through it in one way or another. I know I have. I've lost many loved ones in my life, especially at a young age. And I had to learn to cope with that. And I had to learn to move on in life. And it's really a situation, you take it one day at a time. And Lee, of course, my biggest thing for you to tell you is you're loved, you have support, and no matter what, every day will get a little easier. It's never going to be over. You're never going to forget them, but it'll get a little easier. As long as you keep them in your heart, and as long as you remember the good times and what they meant to you and what they inspired you to be, that's the real love. And that's just the real heart there. And I know it's a situation that we all give our thoughts, our prayers, and reflections to you and your family. But also to know that there's good things for you in this. That you have support here, that the show supports you, our fans are going to support you, and I promise you, like I said, each day will get a little easier as it goes. And as not only my co-host, but also I consider you a dear friend, not only as a colleague as well. But I'm very excited for the future that you have, and I know your grandfather would be very excited as well. Not only at what you're growing into, but the man you've become. And everyone in the chat, I appreciate, all your love for Lee. He's very important to us, and he's going to be doing a lot for us. And the fact that we know that this is going to help Lee in life, and it's a situation that's unfortunate, but we know through this it helps us grow and become better people and better individuals. So, Lee Hillis, I thank you so much for being a part of this show and a part of this network, and I'm very excited for the future that you're going to have with us. And I very well know that your family and also your grandfather would be very proud. And guys, I want to thank you especially for taking the time tonight on this Monday and sharing it with us on the show. We have laughs, we talk sports, we get serious at times, but that's what this show's about. We're here to entertain, enlighten, educate, and send you out in the world as a better person and to feel a little bit better about yourselves. So thank you once again. And of course, before we go, don't forget, guys, March 1st, we will be breaking ground on the official Titan Upload Network on YouTube. We're excited about this. You'll get to find all our content under one roof. Yes, you'll be able to find Titan Upload, Titan Rossi, the Jump Pass podcast with Ryan Harris, of course, the Power Hour with Michael Bishop and Lee Hillis, James from Titans in Life, our best insider, Lee Hillis's podcast, the 615 podcast, and of course our draft insider, Brian Johannes, which he is keeping busy this April. He's going to get us all the draft insight that we need. So of course, make sure that you follow us when we drop that on March 1st. And of course, if you can't wait that long, go to Facebook. We've already got a house there. We're building more land. So, YouTube's kind of like our condo away from Facebook. You can find us all there on Facebook. Of course, Lee Hillis will get more of his stuff on there as we get rolling. But of course, the Titan Upload Network also on Facebook. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Lee, once again, our thoughts, our prayers, and reflections are with you and your family. We're very happy that you took the time and joined us on our inaugural show. Get used to seeing Lee Hillis, everybody. We're going to have some great shows, and we've got a lot of great things planned this upcoming year. The Titan Upload Network is growing. Lee Hillis is a big part of why the network is growing, and we're super excited to see that transition. But as always, guys, thank you once again for joining us on the Power Hour. As always, it's because of your support we continue to do what we do. Round of applause to you, as always. Much love to you, and thank you again for joining us tonight. I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour with my co-host Lee Hillis. As always, take care, tighten up.
Thank you for watching this live presentation of the Titan Upload Network.